The doctors told my parents I was going to die in 14 days. I'm the only person in history who's ever had Hodgkin's lymphoma and then Askins sarcoma. Completely unrelated. I had literally a 0.0000001% chance of living. In my mind, I wasn't fighting for my life. I was just sick. I didn't go in there with the fear of dying. I went in there with the confidence of living.
You proved doctors to be wrong. Because you're still alive.
I proved them not right. Don't allow someone else's limitations become your reality. You're the only person who can decide what's possible or not.
You've been the first cancer survivor who has been on the top of Mount Everest.
Correct.
And have just with one lung.
With one lung, yeah. You have to be in tune with knowing that you're conquering yourself, not the mountain. I've learned how to use my pain as my purpose and my pain as my strength. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. Today's the best day ever.
And the only day. We talked about the false summit and the true summit. Can you explain the difference? Lepo zdrav, dobrodošli v novi epizodi našega podcašta Strategije odličnosti. Danes je z nami Swarner, who defines himself as a resilient human being.
That's it.
Sean, welcome.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And I love the intro. I have no idea what you said, but I think it sounds great.
Tell us about why did you choose this title? Like from all the titles you could have, like a performance coach, author, 2 times cancer survivor, and so on, you would like to call yourself a resilient human being.
You know, it's interesting because we were talking before this off camera, and you asked me if there was one word that could define who I was, and it didn't even go, my brain didn't go anywhere near the accomplishments in what I've done, because I've done a number of masterminds and classes, and there was one in particular where we sat at a table. There were 5 different tables, 5 people at each table, and we went around the table introducing ourselves. You know, who are you? And someone would say, you know, I work here, I do this. And it gets to me, and I think, I don't know who you are. You told me what you do. So when you asked me that question, it made me think of that mastermind I was part of, and I was like, instead of what I do, why don't I share who I am and what I think I've become? And I'm a resilient human being.
What do you mean by that?
You know, it's the interesting question. Resilience is developing, and it's interesting because I was giving a keynote and doing a question and answer session with some people in the United States who were in the National Hockey Hall of Fame. And they asked them a question, someone asked a question about what does resilience mean to you? And of course, just like most people, like, oh, you just have to be tough. You have to grit it out. You just have to push through. That didn't really answer the question of how you develop resilience. I think resilience comes from loyalty. People are like, what do you mean loyalty? What does that have to do with resilience? Being loyal to your personal core values. Because if you have something that matters so much to you, whatever gets in your way will never be enough to stop you. So that, by that definition of resilience, you don't have to build resilience. It comes naturally. So I think for me, resilience is going through everything that I have, but for a deeper meaning and a deeper purpose.
There were many things that you had to conquer, many challenges. If you look back at your life, what was the most difficult one?
I like to joke around a lot. I was like, well, I recently got married, but that's not too difficult. I enjoy that because I was thinking of stress. The body doesn't know the difference between marriage and stress, or marriage and divorce. It's just stress. My most difficult challenge in life it has to be going through 2 terminal cancers. You know, and having the doctors tell my parents, your firstborn son has an expiration date of 14 days. And the doctors told my parents I was going to die in 14 days.
You had the cancer when you were 13 and then again at 17.
16, yeah. So 13 to 18 years old.
I remember something about your story which was really important, that your parents didn't tell you that you had cancer. So they were already aware how powerful the words are. Can you share a little bit about this?
Absolutely. It's interesting because when I was first diagnosed, giving a little bit of backstory, my mom's stepmom passed away from cancer 3 months before I was diagnosed. And my parents didn't want me to associate cancer with death. So when I was diagnosed, my parents never said the C word. They never said that I had cancer. They said I was sick. They said, Sean, you're sick. And Sean, you're going to get better. We're going to do everything we possibly can to get you through this. And because I implicitly trusted my parents, what they're telling me must be true. So in my mind, I wasn't fighting for my life. I was just sick. And I think that helped a tremendous amount because I didn't go in there with the fear of dying. I went in there with the confidence of living.
Would that be something that you could recommend to our audience? So whenever you have a challenge, choose words that will face you or guide you towards healing, towards a result or something that you want?
Absolutely. Absolutely. For example, let's say it's the wintertime and you're driving on the road and you hit some ice and you tell yourself, don't hit the tree, don't hit the tree. What's going to happen? You're going to hit the tree.
Yes.
Steer over here. Focus your energy and attention here. When I was diagnosed, I didn't want to focus on not dying. I didn't want to prevent something bad from happening. I wanted to go after something good. I focused on getting better, living. But I also had a deeper purpose, and we can get to that later. But anyone who's going through something difficult, don't focus on the avoidance of something bad. Focus your energy and attention towards something good. And it'll flip a switch.
You proved doctors to be wrong because you're still alive.
I proved them not right.
Yeah, I mean, you're still alive.
Correct.
I mean, most of the time, doctors are right, but sometimes they can make mistakes. In your case, it was you who proved them, I don't say wrong, but the diagnosis or the 14 days expiration, it's still not true. And hopefully for many, many years, you are going to live. Is there a special recipe that you recommend to our audience whenever they get I don't want to say a similar, but you know, somebody says something to them and they don't want it to be true? How can they fight it? Because did you know that you had only 14 days to live?
I did not.
Okay. Only your parents knew and the doctor.
Correct. Eventually I knew.
And this was the first cancer at 13 or the 17?
The first cancer was, they gave me 3 months to live.
Okay.
Then the second cancer, 14 days.
And those two cancers were not related?
Completely unrelated. Yeah. In fact, I'm the only person in history who's ever had Hodgkin's lymphoma and then Askins sarcoma. So that's why I had literally a 0.0000001% chance of living. But one of the
can you repeat the number?
Yeah, 0.000000001% chance
of living. And you're alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't allow someone else's limitations become your reality. Because most of the time when, for example, if you want to tell me you want to go run a marathon, I'm like, you can't do that. That's me projecting my limitations on you. I have no idea what you're capable of, but so many people project their own limitations on someone else. So don't allow someone else's limitations become your reality. You're the only person who can decide what's possible or not.
But still, when people get certain diagnoses, sometimes they're afraid, you know, and they start asking questions like, why did this happen to me? Or how can they go out from this fear or being stuck in some certain emotions or questions, what is your recommendation?
You can ask yourself 1,000, 1,000,000 times, why me? You may never know the answer. You can't change the fact that, for example, when I had cancer, I asked that so many times, especially the second time. Why me? Why me? Why me? Whatever your faith is, whatever your belief system is, why me? It wouldn't change the fact that I had cancer. Asking that question wouldn't change a thing. What could change, however, would be my perspective on it. And so many times when you're in a situation that's a horrible situation, you can't control that, but you can always control how you react to it. And why am I going to sit there and be angry and bitter and hating life when I don't know how much time I have left? So every morning, even now, I wake up. Today's, it's the only day that I'm guaranteed. So at one point, yeah, I was given 14 days to live, but at some point in my life, I will still have 14 days to live because I will, like everyone dies at some point. It's a morbid statistic, but it's 100%. Death is going to win. Why go through life wondering why me, as opposed to it is happening, how can I make it better?
So your question that you keep asking yourself is, how can I make today better, or how can I make my life better, or someone else's life better? What is your mission or purpose now?
Yeah, how can I make today better than yesterday? For your life, my life, whoever I can affect. There was a story, I read it years ago, and I'm sure I'm going to butcher it, but I just thought of it now. There's a young boy walking on a beach, the water's going out, and it's littered with hundreds of starfish. Have you heard this story?
Yeah.
Yeah. And he picks one up, throws it back in the ocean. The old man comes up and he's like, "What are you doing?" I'm just going to shorten the story. He's like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I'm saving the starfish." He's like, "Well, you can't possibly save all of them. It doesn't matter." And he goes, "It matters to this one." Tosses it back in the ocean. So if you can affect one person's life, wonderful, fantastic. Why would you impact their life on a negative way? Impact someone's life on a positive way, make a positive change, and it might ripple out to somebody else. You never know.
So from being a cancer survivor, you gave your life a new meaning, which is, how can I help other people? And if I help one person, it matters, especially for that person. So what is your driving force through life? Because this happened to you at really early stage of your life.
Very early, yeah.
You think that you became more independent, more self-aware, or how was your life compared to maybe your friends or people at the same age at that time?
So when you were, and by you, I just mean like the general you, when you were 16, 17 years old, we called it high school. When you were in high school, what were your biggest concerns? Maybe making it from class to class on time, maybe getting your driver's license, dating, not getting bullied, where are you going to sit at lunch? The next popular shirt, the clothing, whatever became popular, trendy at the time. That was, I would say, the average. Now imagine someone who's on his hands and knees on the bottom of the shower floor, hair is falling out in chunks, clogging the drain, the water's rising up. Do you think that person would be concerned about those mundane details of life? Now take those same people, move them forward 20, 30 years. They might not be concerned about what's popular, but that still sits there. So when I had the cancers when I did, in the developmental years of my life, I never focused on being popular. I never cared about the nicest clothes or the nicest shoes. I want to be comfortable. I want to be happy. So when I was at a young age, I think I was 13 or 14 years old, going on 40 or 50, understanding life better than anybody else at that time. Because I wasn't worried about what my friends were doing. I was focused on survival. And then afterwards, I realized that I have been given this gift of life. I'm going to take it forward and just enjoy every moment.
So many times I ask people this question: how was your biggest challenge a gift for you? And you already answered in a way. So when you look back, how do you look back at that special period?
I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't go back, and if we had a magical time machine, I wouldn't go back and change anything. I wouldn't remove the cancer. I wouldn't remove those experiences, because I've learned how to use my pain as my purpose and my pain as my strength.
How can you do that? So if somebody today listening to us has severe pain, how can they turn this pain into purpose?
One simple way is gratitude. Being grateful for what you have as opposed to looking at what you don't. You know, when I was in the hospital, I couldn't get out and play football. I couldn't go out and swim. I couldn't do any of that stuff. That's not what I focused on. I focused on the fact that I was alive. I had my mom, my dad, my friends, my family there. I focused on what I did have, not the lack of what I didn't. You know, I take a group up Kilimanjaro every year. I've been up Kilimanjaro 27 times. There's some in Tanzania and Moshi, they're some of the poorest people I've ever seen in my life, but they're some of the happiest because they're focused on what they have and grateful for that as opposed to looking at things they don't.
So one of the secrets in your life is focus on what you have.
Gratitude.
Be grateful.
Grateful, exactly. Yep.
How you decided to climb mountains? What was the story behind that? Because you've been the first cancer survivor who has been on the top of Mount Everest.
Correct.
And have just with one lung.
With one lung, yeah. I jokingly say it was a logical step. There's no logic in that. So long story short, I went to college, went to university, started molecular biology, took organic chemistry, immunology, switched to psychology, wanted to use my mind and my body and my studies to actually be a psychologist for cancer patients. Because as we know, the journey of cancer is not individual. Family, friends, support, everybody goes through. And I wanted to help them. But I couldn't because I didn't help myself first. Dropped out of school, not the college, but the university where I was studying for my master's and my doctorate. And that's when I wanted to be the first cancer survivor to climb Everest. And I wanted to use it as literally the highest platform on earth to give people hope.
How long did it take you to achieve that goal?
When I came up with the idea and stood on the top of Everest, just around a year. I mean, most people train for years to climb Everest. I think I did it in 10 months, 11 months.
What was the most difficult part of climbing Mount Everest?
Trusting your decisions and turning and being committed to turning around, because it takes a stronger person to turn around than it does to keep going. If you keep pushing forward and you don't feel well or the weather's bad, that's ego. And I think ego gets in the way. You have to be in tune with knowing that you're conquering yourself, not the mountain. So I wouldn't say it's not anything physical. Yes, it was very difficult physically. You know, every step I would sit there when I was on the summit night, every step I would stop and I would just lean over and breathe 10, 15 times, take another step, breathe 10, 15 times. It's miserable. And I was on the mountain for more than 4 weeks. People don't realize that. But the most difficult part was learning to trust yourself, trust your decisions, and know that if you have to, you need to turn around.
What were your thoughts at that moment? You were 4 weeks on the mountain, you know, cold,
stinky.
Yeah. You know, what were your thoughts? What were you thinking about?
You know, it's interesting. When my brother was at base camp, he was my base camp organizer, and he was going to make my decisions when I was up higher on the mountain when my brain was hypoxic. And it would be different each week. Now that I'm thinking about it, I haven't thought about this in a long time. The first week we were enjoying it. This is great. The second week, well, what do we miss from home? Then the third week, well, then we start talking about the food. I miss the pizza. I miss the steak. I miss this, something familiar. And then the third week, okay, well, we're going up soon. So it was a different thing each week, I would say. I haven't thought about that in a long time. Interesting. But the biggest thing that never left me, it was always there, the purpose behind it. It always goes back to, for me, personal core values. Why? It's never the thing, it's the thing behind the thing. So it's never about the summit, it's always why. And for me, I had a flag about this big that had names of people touched by cancer. And it was always folded up in my chest pocket, always close to my heart, as a reminder of why I was on the mountain. So that was always there. And they were always, people touched by cancer were always reminding me to continue putting one foot in front of the other. So throughout those 4 weeks, that was always there. And we had our satellite phone. We would call my mom. My mom and my dad were in charge of collecting more names because we wanted to put them on there. And we would write a hand Sharpie on the flag. We had it printed beforehand, but we were taking the names up to the very last second, writing names on there. And people who I knew before we left were going through cancer. And then I remember one of them, a lady named Yasuyo Suzuki, a friend of ours, she passed away while I was on the mountain. So I wrote her name on the flag. But going up the mountain, when I got to the summit, I actually pulled the flag out, and I was the last person touched by cancer to reach the summit.
Did they know that you're climbing Mount Everest and putting their names on the flag?
They did. So they would submit their names, okay, and then we would take the names and write them on the flag.
So if you had a hard moment, you just look at the flag and read the name?
I would just remember the flags right there. Yeah, because if they're continuing to fight their good fight through the cancer, then I can continue taking one step after another up the mountain. I can always pick up the phone, the satellite phone, and say, hey, I'm done. Let's go home. A helicopter comes in, takes me out, evac, rescue. People fighting for their lives, going through cancer, they can't pick up the phone and say, hey, I'm not feeling it today. I think I'm kind of done. I'll come back next year. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, true. So if somebody is struggling, fighting cancer right now, after helping so many people, inspiring them, what is your recommendation? What do you tell them?
It might not look like it now, but it can be a blessing. Because it'll put so many things in order of importance in your life. Because maybe your life is on pause. That's the remote for life. Maybe your life is on pause right now. Take a step back and look at what you value most. Were you going after your job? Were you working too hard? I'm not saying that's why you got cancer, not at all. But I'm saying this might be an opportunity to evaluate your life. What's most important? Is it the money? Is it family? Is it your health? Because now that you don't have it, probably is. So anybody who's going through through cancer, through a difficult time, maybe it's time to evaluate your life and just be grateful. Again, be grateful for what you have and don't look at what you don't.
But people still feel this emotion of fear, or, what if I will miss out my kids' graduation, or there's so many things that they're thinking in the future, and suddenly this future is not so real anymore. How do you encourage them? What do you tell them?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't have all the answers. Because everyone's an individual. If you want to see your child graduate from high school, hold on to that picture. That might be enough to get you there. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard and seen of. There was one lady who was a grandmother. All she wanted to do was see her grandchild be born. And once that happened, 3 days later, she passed away. The truth of the matter is, without getting too morbid, we don't know when we're going to die. We don't know when our expiration date's going to come. It might be tomorrow. It might be on the road, driving down the road, and I get hit by a car. I don't know. So why am I going to worry about something that might happen in the future, or it might not? So I say that a lot of times, people who are anxious, people who are worried, they're thinking too much in the future. of all these things that might happen. I mean, how many times have you thought about something in the future, you're worried about it, and it didn't even happen?
Most of the
Most of the time.
Yeah, true.
But you get so worked up and anxious and excited and nervous. That's where anxiety comes from, thinking in the future. People who are depressed are thinking in the past. They're lamenting and thinking about something they didn't do yesterday or the day before or the years before. They're depressed. They're anxious, but the people who are in the present moment are the ones who are happy. So literally every morning I wake up, I tell myself the past is gone. There's nothing I can do about it. Tomorrow may never come. No matter what happens today, today's the best day ever.
And the only day.
Exactly. That's all we're guaranteed. None of us are guaranteed tomorrow.
Before we started this podcast, we talked about the false summit and the true summit. Can you explain the difference?
Absolutely. So a true summit gives you fulfillment. A false summit leaves you expecting more. And the concept hit me when I was at the North Pole, completed what's called the Explorer's Grand Slam. And the camera, there's a beautiful film on Amazon. The footage is amazing. The camera panned over and looked at me like, Sean, you just completed something no one in history's ever done before. How do you feel? And like most people on social media, on any kind of media, for the camera, oh, this feels great. I feel amazing. But in all honesty, I felt hollow. Because my first thought was, what's next? Now what? I went home. I was depressed for about a month. It's just trying to think, okay, well, what am I doing now? And that's when I realized that fulfillment, success and fulfillment don't often arrive at the same time. So you can accomplish something and feel unfulfilled and then look back at it and realize, that was kind of fulfilling. But a false summit could be wanting to try to get the corner office, getting the corner office, being proud, and then all of a sudden thinking to yourself, okay, well, now what? Getting the Christmas bonus. This is fantastic. Okay, now what? I want more. I want more. The next thing, the next goal. The true summit is when you arrive and you're happy. The true summit is enjoying the process and the journey and knowing that there's a purpose behind what you're doing. It's when fulfillment and accomplishment line up.
How people know if they're now going into their lives into the direction of the true summit? Is there a question they can ask themselves, or how do you guide them? Because I see this book that you have here, there is a special method behind the true summit.
Earlier you also told me about your book with core values, and I'm thinking that could line up really well.
The title of my book is, If You Only Had 6 Months to Live, What Would You Do? And there's a series of questions that I ask people, and mostly when I ask them those questions, they tell me they would spend more time with their families or, with their loved ones. They would be more in the nature. So they would spend more time with things that they already are part of their lives. And very few people say, I would like to have a new car, or
right.
So it's probably very similar thinking.
It is. It's actually, it's not in this one. This is the very first edition, but it's created around a framework called the ASCEND method, ASCEND, and it's awareness, stretch, clarity, ethos, and navigate and design. So the very first thing is being aware of going after false summits. And in the first chapter, there are questions afterwards that help you identify the patterns that you're living in life that create these situations for false summits. And it goes back to core values. If you're making decisions based on what others think is success, as opposed to what you think is success, you're after a false summit. Because from the day we're born, we are told what success looks like. It's the zeros in the bank account to the left of the decimal point, not the right. The zeros in the bank account. It's the new car, the big house, the third house, whatever it might be. And I've worked with a lot of people who have multiple private jets, homes around the United States, 15 cars. From the outside, everything looks amazing, but on the inside, they're hollow. And once you start veering off your personal path by not making decisions based on your personal core values, you're going towards a false summit. But the first step is being aware of what those are.
And sometimes disease could be blessing in disguise. This is something that happened in my life. I was probably living or going into the direction of the false summit. And then after my parents divorced and so on, I ended up in a hospital. And I realized now, or many years later, that that was a gift, that it made me find my true summit or the direction that I needed to go in my life. But at that very moment, when I was in a hospital, it wasn't nice. It was difficult. It was painful. And you said, you need to give a different meaning to that pain. So is there a question that people can ask when they're hurting? Because you said, don't ask why questions, because there is no good answer to that question. But is there a better question? You said, how can I be grateful for what I have? This is something that you already shared, but is there any other question that might support someone listening to us that they need?
I think because you mentioned the hospital, what I thought was pain is inevitable. Suffering is a choice. And I think if people can understand there's a difference between physical pain and mental anguish and suffering, you can choose to go down that hole or you can choose to climb out. And I think if you understand that there is a difference between pain and suffering and that the latter is a choice, you're going to see life a lot differently. You know, like I said, because there is physical pain, but it's your choice if you want to suffer or not. It's your choice on if you think this is a bad situation. It's your choice to think if it's a good situation or not. It literally all depends on your perspective.
It's easy for us now
afterwards.
Yes, to say, you know, but at that very moment, I remember, you know, there's always someone who is suffering, or maybe not even choosing to suffer, but looking for a different, better way and a quicker way to get out of that. Did you do something specifically, like pray or meditate? Did you eat more healthy foods? There is a strategy that we can share, like a simple, easy strategy, or there isn't?
Yes and no. I did eat healthy. I ate healthier, not all the time. Even now I have a cheat day. I can do whatever I want. But I would say, while you're talking, I was thinking the biggest component that I utilized when I was going through the treatments, when I was in a bad situation, I used vivid visualization. Because the mind doesn't know the difference between reality and vivid visualization. So I would visualize myself swimming up and back in a 50-meter breaststroke. I was a swimmer. I loved swimming. And whenever I was suffering, I would take my mind somewhere else and focus on something that I wanted to happen, a goal, which was the 50-meter breaststroke. Day in, day out, thousands of times, I visualized myself swimming down and coming back, touching the wall and looking around in both directions, being in first place. So I took my mind from that bad situation into something good. It can be whatever you want. It can be visualizing yourself, as we mentioned earlier, at a graduation. But take yourself from the pain, the suffering, take yourself from the suffering and put it somewhere else where now you can see yourself in that situation, because that might be enough to help you go through what you're going through now. What do you suggest?
I love that method. I mean, it's a form of self-hypnosis, or you know, many times people, when they have pain, they dissociate from their body. Mm-hmm. And the way you do it, it's perfect. And you also create great emotions, great chemistry in your whole body. So,
and that's That's the biggest key most people miss when they're doing sports, even without going through something traumatic. If you're visualizing yourself coming in first place, you're visualizing yourself having a good podcast, whatever it might be, people can see it, smell it, use as many senses as possible. The biggest connector then is what you said. How do you feel in that time? How do you feel when you visualize that? Because that's what makes it real in your mind and body. Not the smelling, not the seeing. Yes, that's fantastic. But the biggest component most people miss is how do you feel in that moment? That's when it becomes real.
So in your painful moments, you feel good.
Yeah.
Or you're looking for ways to feel good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So this is a great recommendation for anyone today suffering or maybe having a diagnosis which is not a good one. Visualize as vividly as possible.
Absolutely.
Using all 5 senses and see yourself getting better or doing something that you really enjoy.
And emotionally.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love that. So I don't want to go through all your achievements because they are really impressive. So how do you find the energy? I mean, I'm thinking, even thinking about the Ironman or other achievements, how do you find this incredible energy? Because you really
sleep.
You sleep.
I try to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep every day because I wake up early, I go to bed early. I need that energy. But I also know, I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not always positive. I'm not always full of energy. I'm not always ready to go in the morning. There are mornings I wake up and I open my eyes. I'm like, ugh, not today. But over time, I've put together a system that helps. At home when I'm back in Colorado or Puerto Rico, 6 o'clock wake up, and 6:15 I'm doing yoga. I have certain non-negotiables that I do every day, and I'm more flexible the other times because I think if you're too rigid, it's gonna break eventually. So I have flexibility in my day, but I do have some certain non-negotiables. Those don't change.
Can you share with us?
I drink 4 liters of water every day. Except today so far. When I'm at home, I've been traveling for the past 2 weeks, but 4 liters of water every day. I try to get 8 hours of sleep every.
When you say try, do you have a certain time you sleep? I'm following Brian Johnson. I don't know if you know him. It's the person who says he's never going to die.
Is that the guy who takes like 1,000 pills a day?
Yeah. So every day at 8:30, he's in bed sleeping, and he has 100% sleep using Whoop. Are you so strict also?
It depends on what I'm doing the next day.
Okay.
For example, when we flew, early morning flights, I'll wake up sometimes at 3 a.m. to catch the early morning flight. There's no way I'm going to get 8 hours of sleep unless I go to bed at 4, 5 o'clock or something. So that doesn't work. But what I do try to do is knowing where I'm going. If it's 6 hours ahead of time, Kilimanjaro, for example, 9 hours, sometimes 10 hours from where I live, I will start going to bed an hour early every day and waking up an hour early every day to adjust to the time. But I do my best, even when I travel, to get 8 hours of sleep. And then what time I go to bed depends on what time I'm going to wake up the next morning. So my tomorrow begins the night before.
So something that you said, and I really like that, you say that you are not always positive. And I think this is a great strategy that we could share with our audience. Basically, you said you're human. So
everyone's human.
Yeah. So being human means that sometimes you can be positive, sometimes negative, and that's okay. But create a system in your life where you have some structure and you have some non-negotiables so that you have energy. And that energy really helps you serve other people and in your life.
Correct. But I also know when I do have those not so good days, the bad days, they're going to pass. Just because I messed up something doesn't mean that I'm a mess up in life. It just means that one instance I was down. Just because I'm sad today or depressed doesn't mean I'm a depressing person. It's just a moment in time. So don't allow that moment in time define who you are for the rest of your life. So you know it's going to pass.
You're saying about things that you messed up. Are there any mistakes that you could share with us, and what did you learn from them?
I didn't marry my wife sooner. Mistakes. I mean, younger, not studying for exams, getting a poor mark or a poor grade. Absolutely. But I wouldn't worry about it afterwards. I don't have any, to answer that in a different way, I don't have any regrets because I attempt and I try certain things because I think at the end of life, I don't know anyone who regrets the things they do. It's the things they hadn't tried or the things they hadn't done because they were too afraid or too scared or, well, what's that person going to say about me? It's going to pass. So I know that I want to live a life of fulfillment with no regrets of doing things that I always want to at least attempt.
Are there any things that you are afraid to do?
Long silence. Interesting way of putting it, but I'm afraid of letting others down. I'm afraid of disappointing others, especially my family, because my mom and my dad raised someone who is very morally and ethically driven. And if I did something that I don't want to say they didn't approve of, but would make them question why I did it, I'm not afraid of that, but I don't want to let them down. My wife, I always want to make sure she's taken care of. My health, I think, is good. I mean, I'm in great shape. Like I said, I have one lung, and I remember doing a podcast once. The guy asked me, well, have you ever thought of a lung transplant? And I was like, I think I'm doing okay. I don't need, I'm good. I don't think so. How about you?
Yeah, I'm afraid of, sometimes I'm afraid that I will let people down, or maybe when I speak English, this is one of my fears. I'm afraid that my English is not good enough and that I would make mistakes. That's why I've been struggling to do my program in English for many years, and hopefully I will launch it now. I think what other people will think of me, it's a point that maybe is stopping me in life.
It's interesting because my wife, I mentioned it, she's from Puerto Rico, so her first language is Spanish, mine's not. And I don't have a fear of speaking Spanish. I just want to make sure that when I do it, it's proper. And it's interesting how looking at social media, and you said both of us, like what other people think about us, it's amazing how so many people are more concerned about what others think of them than what they think of themselves.
True. At the same time, I keep pushing, and probably you do the same, even though you're afraid of something, you're still doing that. And I think that's important, to acknowledge that you are afraid, but in spite of that, you still move forward. One
step at a time. That's how you get to the top of Everest as well.
So I think that's another great lesson that we could give to our audience, that, even though you're afraid of something, keep pushing forward.
Absolutely, yeah.
If this is something that you feel in your heart, that's the right direction.
Just like climbing Everest, like learning a new language, you're not going to all of a sudden magically appear at the summit. It's one step at a time. You get to base camp, you realize, okay, well, I want to speak that language. That's a long way to go. One step at a time. It's the only way you're going to get there.
There's something that maybe, and I want to touch base on that one as well. It's about self-worth. And it could be also one of my pain points. Many times when I go to the States, so I travel to the US a lot. And when I talk to people in different mastermind groups and so on, I feel that they're so much ahead of me. And I feel, oh my God, I shouldn't be at this table. The language they use, the methodologies they're using and so on. But I feel that that's something also part of many of my students, that they feel they're not worthy. And because they feel they're not worthy, they don't want to make the next step or do something. Did you ever feel this emotion, and how do you deal with that?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. there was a time I was at a mastermind, and there was a guy who was a multi-billionaire. When he was 30 something, I think, he sold 7 companies to Warren Buffett. And he said he was there to make more money at the mastermind. And I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm not a billionaire. Like, what am I doing here? But then I realized everybody has their own stories. Everybody's perspective on life is different. Even with twins, identical twins, they have a different life experience. So what I am saying is of value because you don't know my perspective. What you're saying is of value to me because I don't know your perspective. So I think if it comes down to trying to find that confidence, knowing that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, you can learn something from everybody on the planet. And I think if you share your voice and you share your story and your perspective, that might help someone else understand you a little bit more. I can learn something from the multi-billionaire, but he can also learn something from me about family and appreciation.
Yeah, I keep saying to people, if you're alive, if you're on this planet, there's something that you have to give. There is a purpose or a story, a message within you. Keep sharing, and being alive means you're worthy.
Absolutely. I was flying from Dallas to Hong Kong, and I sat next to a guy who made that trip once every other week. I can't even imagine that. But we just got into talking about him, his making money, this, that, the other. He missed his son's first words, his son's first steps, his son hitting the ball off the tee. Like, how much money is enough money? And then we started talking about life's purpose. I was like, have you fulfilled your life's purpose? He sat there and thought about it for a second. And I asked him, are you still alive? So kind of going back to what you said, we have a life purpose. And so many people are looking for the purpose of life. Discover a life of purpose instead.
Mm. So what do you see yourself in the future?
Still married. It's interesting because I still have, and I'll be honest, I still have problems focusing on what I am and who I am and where I am in the future because of, and this might be my excuse, but the developmental years of my life, when you're supposed to develop a concept of the future through your teen years, this second cancer, 1.5 years went by with me being terrified to close my eyes at night because I didn't know if I was going to wake up the next day. So now when the doctor said, hey, you're in remission, go live your life. Okay, like, what does my future look like? I still don't know. But I have an idea of what I want to do with this, what I want to do with my speaking, what I want to do with the business, what I want to do with the adventures, what I want to do with my family. I have an idea of that. So maybe I need to take my own advice and start using more vivid visualization and thinking about how that looks, how that tastes, how that smells.
So you have different projects that you want to do in the future. Do you write them down? How do you make the plans for the future?
They're written down. I have a journal. I usually write in the journal 3 or 4 times a week. It's usually things I'm grateful for, things I want to do, and things I have to do or want to do. But with this, I'm turning it into an AI. This is actually going to be turned into an onboarding program of the AI that's going to help people focus on their true summits and avoid their false summits. It's almost done. Continue the trips up Kilimanjaro until I can't anymore. Machu Picchu, Everest Base Camp. I just want to keep living, and I want to suck the marrow out of life. And with my wife, because every time I go up Kilimanjaro, for the past 8 years with her charities, she supported 100 orphans at the base of the mountain with food and essential supplies for the whole year. So we can't have kids, but I guess we have 100 of them.
Wow, that's beautiful. So why people join you when you go to Kilimanjaro?
Well, a number of reasons. One, the average success rate on the mountain is 48%. My groups are at 99%.
Wow.
We do things differently. It's not an expedition. I call it an inspedition. So it's an inward journey through an outward adventure. I've also been adopted into one of the local tribes. So we get to experience the culture from the inside, not the outside. We also do a 7-day hike up the mountain. It turns into a transformational travel experience. Because one of the questions I ask people all the time is, what part of you do you plan on leaving at the top? Like, what part of you that no longer serves who you are, do you plan on leaving up there? You know, a question like fear, you know, my old self, things like that. And then we also fly into the Serengeti for a 4-day safari.
Wow. So when you talk to people joining you at this trip, why do they come? For the adventure? Is there
so many different reasons. They want a life-changing experience. It's been on their bucket list. They want to use the mountain as a mirror. They want the part of the inspedition. They want the success rate. They want the, I mean, you name it. I've had people from 13 to 70. There was the 13-year-old skipped his way up to the summit. His parents were there, and he used that to become more confident. His stutter stopped for some reason. You know, he went back to school, and he was more confident. The 70-year-old finally forgave himself for not being enough on the summit. So people come for so many different reasons, but they're all personal reasons, which is amazing.
And the mountain heals them, or the
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
How long is the preparation for the trip?
Well, it depends, because a lot of people ask, you know, what do I have to do to be in shape? I was like, well, round's a shape. So if you're in that shape, you need a little bit more training than someone who's, you know, a square shape or a rectangular shape. 6-8 months maximum, depending on what shape you're in now.
How can people reach you?
That's the easiest question so far. SeanSwarner.com.
Yeah. So if you had, before I ask you this question, is there any question that I should ask you, but I haven't yet?
I don't think so. For some reason, my 103-year-old grandma is coming to my mind right now. In October, she turned 103, and she always gives me, you know, little lessons. She's like, Sean, just get out there and dance. If no one's watching, who cares? I'm like, okay, thanks, Grandma. I don't know why she just popped in my mind. I'll have to call her when we get done.
So she is 103 years old.
Yeah.
Wow. What is her secret for such a longevity?
Well, she was always active, and I asked her that same question, and I was like, Grandma, what do you do every morning? She's like, I wake up and I jiggle. I'm like, what? So I wake up and I jiggle. So wake up and jiggle. That's the secret.
How long does she do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I didn't ask her.
Okay, but she's moving a lot probably, or?
She is. She has a walker. She lives by herself, and she'll wake up and she'll just do laps around the house.
Wow. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I want to ask you the question from my book. If you had 6 months to live and you couldn't move that date because you have done it before, what would you do if you only had 6 months?
This is going to sound really weird because of everything I just said, and I've never thought about this. I would divorce my wife for good reasons. Stick with me. I would divorce my wife, charge up my credit cards so she wasn't responsible for those, and then take her around the world. Yeah, that's probably what I do. Because that way we don't have children. No one would be responsible for my debt. So I'll divorce her first so she wouldn't be responsible for the debt, rack up a ton of debt, just travel around the world, see a bunch of things, and then be with my family if I knew I was going to die at, you know, whatever time and date, and then fly in all my friends and family to celebrate.
Is there a message that you would like to give them if you had like a final speech or?
You know, so many people, and I'm just going to come up with it off the top of my head. As we discussed, so many people are afraid to take that first step, but you will never know unless you try. And why live a lifetime of regrets? I would much rather know.
A great message for our audience, you know, take that first step.
Absolutely. Well, find inspiration in someone, but maintain your own empowerment and motivation to take the next step. then the next step. Just keep going. Just be better today than you were yesterday.
Beautiful message. Sean Swarner, thank you so much for being in Slovenia and also joining our podcast. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hvala, ker spremljate ta PodcAŠt. Naročite se na naš YouTube kanal. Naročite se na to, da boste prvi obveščeni o naših vsebinah, o naših novih gostih in hkrati s tem, ko se naročite na naš YouTube kanal, nam pomagate, da se lahko dotaknemo še večjega števila ljudi.